Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. I'm your host, Madison Malloy, and I'm so excited. Today's guest is the very famous, iconic dad from the Wonder Years, Dan Lauria. I'm so excited to talk to him about his previous acting roles and also his upcoming new off-Broadway show called Just Another Day. He's going to tell us all about that. It's very exciting. He goes through some iconic Hollywood stories and some impactful lessons. You are not going to want to miss this episode. So we will be right back with our amazing guest.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. Just wanted to remind you to make sure you grab a copy of my book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up. It is a great, funny self-help book that is going to help you get out of your own way. I have already helped thousands and thousands of people, and they are on their way to living their dream life, and I want every listener to be able to live their dream life as well. So grab a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even the audiobook on Audible. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to another fun episode of Next to Madison. I'm super excited for this episode because we have got the amazing actor Dan Lauria with us, and it is such an honor to have him on the show. As I grew up watching the Wonder Years, you were the iconic dad on the Wonder Years, so thank you so much for coming on the show and gracing us with your presence.
Well, thank you for having me, and that was the writers on the Wonder Years. We had the best. Yeah.
So, okay, so let's talk about that. What were you doing when you got that role?
Well, I was a New York actor doing a lot of off and off Broadway plays, worked at the Public a lot. And then my manager made me go out to LA. I went out at the wrong time, and I did a number of guest spots, especially a lot of Cagney and Lacey. And I did 2 Growing Pains, and Neil Marlins, who worked who's a head writer on the Growing Pains. He eventually wrote the Wonder Years, him and his wife, Carol Black. So actually, I didn't even get an audition. I didn't have a big agent. And Joanna Kearns from Growing Pains said, "Did you get up for Neil's new show?" And I said, "I can't get in." And she called the casting director, who was the same casting director for Growing Pains. The casting director called Neil, out of sight, out of mind. He went, "Oh, Dan would be perfect. Tell him to come in tomorrow." And I went in and I auditioned with 9 million other people, but Neil was the one who really wanted. They wanted Elliot Gould, but Neil, who's a good friend and a great actor, but Neil didn't want anybody that was well known. He wanted it to look like The Family Next Door,
Interesting.
Yeah. It's always a battle between the creative and the executive. The executives say it's our money, and the creatives say, yeah, but it's our vision. And that's never changed in silent movies,
Yeah. So, I mean, that's amazing. So you got the role, and then filming started in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was just such a great show because it was in the 80s, but it was still like way back in the day.
Oh yeah, it was back in the 60s and 70s. So but the premiere was right after the Super Bowl, so our numbers were through the roof, and everybody said, "Oh, sorry, should have turned that off before. Sorry about that."
It's all good.
But then they said, "Yeah, but next week there's no Super Bowl. You'll never see those numbers again." And our numbers were even higher, and we were the #1 show. So
That's amazing. And it had a good run.
Oh yeah, we would have still been on. This is typical Hollywood story. We were number 27 out of 166 shows, and we were canceled.
Why?
And we were canceled because of one man, Ronald Perlman, the man who owned Revlon. He bought the company that made our show, and he sold off pieces of the company. And of course, the most valuable piece was the Wonder Years.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he sold it to Ted Turner for syndication, and he tried to blame Ted Turner. And Ted Turner, who never did public statement, he came out right away and said, "I would have bought 100 more. It wasn't me. I wanted to go at least one more year." And then Ronald Perlman, the exact quote, "There wasn't enough profit to warrant another season."
Oh, jeez.
And we did everything we could, Madison. The actors went, the producing staff. We said we won't take our raise. Let us do 12 more so we can end it the way we want to end it. In all the years I've been in the business, I never seen this. The Teamsters went and said, we'll let you have 2 less drivers if you do 12 more at the same price. Everybody wanted it to end the way the writers wanted it to end. But that's why it ended with all that narration in the parade on the last episode. That narration was telling you what you would have seen the next year.
Oh, had they done the 12 more episodes? Wow, that
Right.
is interesting. And obviously it was a huge hit because they did a remake of it.
Well, yeah, I talked to Dulé Hill, who's playing my part, and I asked him what happened, why didn't that work? And he said when we stuck with the original formula, not trying to do sitcom, it worked very well. But they kept being pushed to do sitcom, and our show was never a sitcom.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Matter
that
of fact,
makes sense.
first time I remember hearing the word dramedy
Yeah.
was with the Wonder Years. I'm sure somebody used it before, but they didn't know where to put us. And the only reason why, with Emmys and all those things, we were in a comedy category was because we were a half-hour show.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's so interesting. But you must have some amazing memories from that. What was one of your favorite memories that has stood out to you?
Oh, I just I remembered seeing what Charles Durning, my mentor, said that whenever you're in front of a camera, you're still performing for a live audience. It's the crew, and you will see things where they let you know what you just did was not up to par or that was great. And I always remember um, Steve, our I can't think of his last name. He was not only our camera operator, Steve Comfort, but he was our DP.
Uh-huh.
We shot something and they yelled cut. If he got off the camera, it meant it was great. If he sat there on a camera, it was his way of saying ask for another take.
So
And I
I
remember the
did
first
I
day I noticed that, and I said, "Oh, Charlie was right. They're letting us know."
yeah. So I didn't know that show was shot in front of a live audience.
No, no, no. The
Oh,
meaning the crew. You do it for the
the
crew.
crew. Gotcha.
Whenever
Okay.
a young actor says, "What's the," you don't have to speak as loud, and they do all that mumbling stuff. I said, "No, you're disrespecting the crew, who's the toughest audience in the world because those guys have seen everything. The older guys, they've been around forever. They've seen the worst and they've seen the best. They've seen edited performances that ended up getting awards, and they've saw beautiful takes that were butchered in editing and nobody got anything.
Right. No, that makes sense. So it was filmed in LA, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. But how fun. And do you still keep in touch with the other crew members, cast members?
Oh yeah, they're all coming to the play at some point. I mean, they're all invited for opening night, but they'll be there. Allie was just here in New York. I see Josh all the time when I'm in New York. Played Paulie.
Oh,
Dan
okay.
just flew in for something, and her and I and Josh went out to dinner. I
Oh,
sent them all flyers. They all right back. I don't know if we'll be there for opening night, but we'll come. And I said, I'll have tickets for you. And they said, we're not theater actors. We can pay for our own tickets. So
yeah. Well, that's nice that you guys still, because you guys were like a family. I mean, America saw you as a family.
yeah, yeah. I mean, some shows, there's a little, it ends up very tense at the end. But our show was never like that. And a lot of that was not only Fred, but his parents, Lou, who unfortunately passed away, and Joanne. They never treated Fred like a stage mom and dad. And
Yeah.
I remember Fred in the very first year missed a day of work. I don't know, he had the sniffles or something. And the next day when he came in, he realized we didn't work. We couldn't shoot without him. He never missed another day of work.
Wow. And he
Yeah.
was pretty young when that show was shot.
Oh yeah, we started. He was 11 and ended when he was 16. So
Yeah.
he was a great team player. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you had another role several years later on Sylvan and Sons.
Oh, I had a few in between. I had
Yeah.
Patty Duke, Amazing Grace, which got rave reviews. We had great numbers, but after a few, Patty didn't want to do it anymore. And then Sullivan's Son, written by Dan Fogelman, who writes Only Murders in the Building now. And
Okay.
he created Pitch, about the first woman baseball player. That was a
Oh,
really good show. And we were on opposite Thursday Night Football, and our ratings went up every week. And I still think if Hillary Clinton had won, they wouldn't have cut that show. It was on Fox
interesting.
next. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things that come into it. And Sullivan and Son, I did Lombardi on Broadway, and Vince Vaughn and Peter Billingsley saw Lombardi, and they wanted me on Sullivan's Son. They produced Sullivan's Son. So,
Yes, I
and
actually
they,
know them.
yeah, and they wanted me to play the old bigot at the end of the bar. And I said, guys, I kind of like this show, but I'm going to tell you, I don't want to play that part because they're not going to buy The Father of the Wonder Years, you know.
Yeah.
So, and they gave it to Brian Doyle Murray, who's hysterical. Then they called me back and said, "You want to play Sullivan?" And I said, "You buy me as an Irishman, I'm in."
Yeah, exactly.
And that ended up 3 seasons. And while we were doing that, they produced A Christmas Story, the musical. And they
Oh,
said, "You want
yes.
to be in that?" And I said, "I can't, I don't even sound good in the shower. I can't sing at all." And they said, "We don't want you to sing. You're going to be the narrator." So I'm the original. So it all leads, theater always leads to something.
Yeah. That
And
is, yeah, it's such a small world because, when I was doing more comedy, I knew Steve Byrne, who's a
oh, yeah.
fabulous guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Great guy. He was
Yeah, and
in New York. I have to send him the flyer now and everything.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a small world because Peter Billingsley ended up marrying my best friend from high school. So that's how I met Steve.
Oh,
And then we were both in comedy. So that's kind of how that relationship happened.
yeah. What does he
So
got?
it's such a
Daughters
small
now.
world. He's
Yeah.
what?
He has 2 daughters now, right?
He has a daughter and a son.
A daughter and a son. Yeah. I knew he had two. I couldn't remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, well, hopefully they'll be working on something new to get you in.
Well, we'll see, and whatever. I rather do theater, so I'm fine.
Okay, so you do like theater. You like working at nights and being in front of a live audience more?
I like nobody cutting up my performance. I
Oh,
like
there you go.
acting, creating a character and staying in it. The young kids today have no idea. They're coming out of college now, never having done a play and making 10-minute movies. And then
Yeah.
when you hire them for a series or a movie, they can't do more than 2 or 3 lines at a time, and the producers don't care because they're going to cut on every line. See, when I
Yeah.
started, we did 3 4 minute scenes in television without a cut because we were all from the
Yeah.
theater. We didn't think that was, oh, what do you mean? I got to do these 5 pages without a cut? We went, oh, that's nothing. I'm
Right.
the third. Who? That's a hard play.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
No, theater acting is definitely a lot more of a skill set than
well, theater acting is acting in front. When you go in front of a camera, especially now, your job is to fill the editing machine. It's not. It's apples and oranges.
yeah. No, absolutely. And so how many like I've heard a thing now where on film, like they just put something in your ear. So they don't even have to memorize the lines. They're just read to
Well,
them.
they do that with the older actors who have a hard time memorizing, but eventually it'll
Oh,
be with the young actors because they know it's going to be cut on every line. I mean,
right.
Oppenheimer won best editing. It's cut on every line. There is no editing. It's cut on every line. Watch it again. You'll see.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Because you don't even think about that. So they do one line and then they cut?
Yeah. So if you do it 10 times and I do it 10 times from different angles, and
Yeah.
you say, hello, how are you? And I say, I'm fine. They use the fourth time you said it and they cut into the sixth time I say, I'm fine. That's not acting. That's filling an editing machine.
Right. That seems like it's a lot of time, and time is money, especially on those sets.
Yeah. Well, in the old days, if you finished early, they patted the director on the back and the actors, and now they fire them for not having enough coverage.
Gosh, yeah, it's really changed. That's for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. And now with self tapes, it's made it even worse. You
What
can't.
do you like audition self-tapes or?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I left Hollywood, asking actors like me who've been around forever to self tape when you got all that footage of us from previous shows. And then they give it to an actor, good actor, very good actor, but with a bigger name.
Yeah.
Didn't self tape. That's like, just dumping on everything we've done. And the union, they didn't. The only thing they fought for was now when they asked me to self tape, I'm allowed to ask, do you have offers out? But the answer is not yet. So I say, well, let me know when you're willing to hire somebody who's self tape, and they won't ever call you back. So my agents are furious. I won't, I'll go in the room and audition, but they don't do that anymore. I love the audition. Charlie Durning
Yes.
taught me to love audition. He taught me to love audition. He said, never audition. When you go in a room, you got 5 minutes to act. Who cares who else is there? Who cares if they hire you? You can act for 5 minutes. And 98% of our union is they're not acting today.
Yeah.
Just be, and I always was excited. I saw old friends. They were all good. They were auditioning. They were all good actors. I know they're going to be good. And I'm going to go in. And, my percentage was very high, but now I can't get in the room. Nobody can. There is no room.
Yeah, because you always hear in Hollywood, like, in order for a show, like names have to be attached. Like there's
Well,
no such thing as like a good
yeah,
concept anymore.
yeah. It always helps a movie or a show if a name's attached. And I'm at a level where they wouldn't ask me to audition for a small part, but they're going to make offers to actors for that big part that I'm auditioning for. So I'll audition for anybody, but only live in the room.
Yeah, I wonder why they stopped doing that. Just
Well, because of COVID. And then they
yeah.
realized, oh, we don't have to go out. So they got 30 people. The last job I did, um, it was up in Vancouver. And the only reason why I got it, last job I did in front of a camera, was the director was somebody I'd worked with a million times. And the character, they said, an old Marine. I'm a Marine. He was a Marine. He said, how about Dan Lauria? And the producer said, oh, Dan, yeah, sure. So I get up there. I thank him. His name was Mike. I thanked him for the job. And I said, Mike, did they have self tapes for this? And he's the director. And he said, I have no idea. And 2 days later, he called and said, they have over 20 self tapes for this part. And I said, I bet you know every one of them. And he said, oh, yeah, it's every guy you play golf with. Everybody was on a show, all great actors, Joe Spano, Bill Smitrovich, Sam McMahon. I can go right down the list. Everybody was on the show. And I said, what ridiculous. And I said, be honest, Mike. Any one of those guys could have done this part. And he goes, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, and they all have tape from years of guest spots where you actually see them acting on a stage, well lit. So, and the young kids think it's an advantage because they all are technically proficient, but then when they get on the set, they can't do 2 or 3 lines unless they're theater people, and very few are anymore.
Yeah. It's amazing. So you've seen Hollywood change a lot from the time you got
Oh
there.
yeah, there were major changes throughout the history of Hollywood. Sound, color, all that stuff. But I think the change that's made the biggest difference in Hollywood, especially to the big directors like Scorsese and Spielberg, is the company now owns the editing machine. They're forcing them to cut on every line, and that's not directing. It's not what they really want to do.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just so I wonder why they do that. That way they know they got the shot and they can splice it however they want.
It's biggest misconception that it's about money. It's not, it's about power. If I own the editing machine, I own you.
Sure.
The editing machine used to be where it took a long time and the director sat with a cutter and you really had to put the movie together the way you want. Now you just fill it, produce, say, cut it on every line. I now power. Look at Scorsese's last movie, about the Native Americans. When he was on Good Morning Joe, he showed a scene with that wonderful young actress and Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's shot in a single shot. And Joe goes, wow, you could see the chemistry of the actors. And Scorsese went on and on and on about, yes, the chemistry is so. That's the only two shot in the whole movie. Well, there's one other two shot later on. There's not one two shot of DiCaprio and De Niro together in the same shot.
So they just shoot them individually. It's amazing. It's
Well,
it's
they're there, but they're cutting from head to head. You don't know what magic moment happened between them. Like Brando dropping the glove and on the waterfront.
yeah,
Something like that might have happened. You wouldn't have had it.
right. No, absolutely. It's amazing. So let's talk about something else that's kind of crazy. It's like obviously people are, and it's coming more to light now that, there's a very dark side to Hollywood. Have you witnessed any of that, like because you've had a very long career?
No, I'm glad a lot of people would say, "Oh no, she's trying to trap me into saying."
No, no, I'm just
No,
curious.
I'm glad you asked that because I do a lecture at colleges about acting, and I tell everybody, all the kids, our business is no different than anybody else's business. 15% of the people I work with are total assholes, despicable people.
Yeah,
85% are working their asses off trying to make sometimes the most inane dialogue in the world be as good as it could possibly be. We're trying to give the audience the best we got.
yeah,
But the difference is in our business, we promote the 15%. We don't promote the 85%. I mean, I can give you a lot of names on the 15%. I won't even work with those people. But I'd rather talk about you work with somebody like Joe Montana or Judith Light, Wendy Maddox, Patty
yeah,
McCormick, who I'm doing a play with, Jody Long from Sullivan and Son. These are wonderful actors. They're fun to
yeah.
be with. We have a lot of laughs. Matter of fact, I always felt guilty about taking my check on Sullivan and Son. There were 4 stand-up comics on it. You couldn't say one word without 5 punchlines coming in.
Yeah.
I would tell Brian, we were like the 2 critics on the Muppets. He was at one end of the bar and I was always behind the bar, and I would
Yeah.
always by him, and all we would do is crack jokes all day. I never laughed so much in my life. So I would back
Oh,
the bank to get my check because I didn't want to show my face.
yeah. Well,
We
those
were,
are the best jobs though,
yeah.
when it doesn't feel like work.
Wonder Years now, that was hard. People got to remember that whenever you saw a close up of me or Allie, the kids had gone home. We're talking the X's on a chair. The
Oh,
kids
wow.
work same hours.
Interesting. Okay, so they weren't even there.
No, they would be there for a master shot. Then we would do their coverage, and then we would go to another scene, do their master shot, and while they were setting up the other scene, the kids would go to school. And then when
Right.
they were finished with all their shots, we'd go back to the beginning and shoot the adults. So
Yeah,
you
that's
had their stand-in who didn't know the line. Sometimes it was more distracting, or you had an X and you had somebody off camera reading the lines.
oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, because you think about when you have young kids, you have to educate them. So they've
Yeah.
got to be, going to school. Did they go to school at a different school or were they
No, they
schooled
were
on set?
tutored on set. And Danica, who's, a genius, a mathematical genius, it was Dave Cohen, who was in charge of teaching the kids while we were shooting, was the first one to go to the producers and say, we got to bring in some special teachers for Danica because she's a genius. He was the first one to spot that. She always gives him credit.
Wow.
Oh, I'm doing this play, excuse me, with Patty McCormick, who was the bad seed in the 50s. and she was 10 years old. She was the first child actress to be nominated for a competitive Academy Award.
Wow.
Well, would she did a live television show that was on Friday nights at 7:30. She would rehearse all week during the day, then get dressed and do the play on Broadway of The Bad Seed. And on Fridays, they would hold the curtain for the play while she changed in the cab and went over there. There were no rules for kids, so,
Amazing.
oh, yeah, they used to, those live, when the play goes up, I hope you have her in a show. And she's the last person you'll meet who did live TV.
Yeah, I would love that. So let's get into the new show that you have,
Mhm.
your off-Broadway show.
Oh, you
Um,
like that segue we just
yeah, exactly. So
manipulated?
just another day.
Yeah. Yeah, we open on the 3rd for preview, 3rd of May, and the official opening is actually going to be on Mother's Day, May 12th.
Oh,
And you can
nice.
go to justanotherday.theater, theater
Okay.
ER, and you'll see schedules and who to call. And we did it upstate New York. I did it with Patty, and then we did it in the Berkshires with Jody Long. And I don't know how to say this without bragging, but we had 8 reviews, and 2 were good, and 6 were raves, including the Albany Reporter and the Boston Globe. So we're going to try to do it here. And for your audience, it's simply about 2 old comedy writers who have dementia. And each day they meet on a bench, they write comedy and they fall in love. And the next day they start all over again.
That's really cute.
Yeah, it has. So there'll be a tear or two, but you'll be laughing. We do a couple
Yeah.
of routines together. So.
And it's relatable because a lot of people, are going through that with family members. It's
Oh, I'm
more
glad you said
prevalent.
all the reviews. You can read them. They're on that website. It's great. I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah.
But the best comment I had, the thing that got to me the most, was we had a Q&A after, and a woman in her 40s said, I'm going through this with my mother. Thank you for not making them stupid.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're not. It's just
No.
part of the brain is
Yeah, she
gone.
says my mother can't remember what she said to me yesterday, but she still comes up with these one-liners and this
Yeah.
quick stuff. She might say it 2, 3 days in a row,
Yeah.
but it's still sharp. And if you bring up something new, she'll come up with something. So, and it's the only play I've seen on this subject where it's not about the family. It's just 2 of them. And what I'm trying to say is the creative spirit never dies, no matter what. Right.
No, I love that. So is it kind of like a single scene show? Like it kind of plays out on this whole park bench?
It's one set. I wrote it so regional theaters could do it in a simple way. It's one set, but it's 3 different days.
Okay. And then how long is it, about an hour and a half show or hour show?
It's an hour and a half show and 1 10-minute intermission in, excuse me, upstate and in the Berkshires. Even with the intermission, we never went beyond an hour and 45 minutes. It's a 90-minute show, but there is one intermission.
Yeah. Well, and so who's the other actor that's playing with you?
Patty McCormick, The Bad Seed.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So you two are the ones on the bench with dementia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
She's
So
the one who did all that live television. She knows what it is to be in a writer's room and to control
yeah,
everything.
absolutely. And so you've had your own experiences with probably people being affected by dementia.
You know, my a good friend of mine, her father was 94, still alive. We used to play softball together, and we'll go up and see him, and he has dementia now, and sometimes he doesn't even recognize his own daughter, but we'll get talking about baseball and the Yankees, and he will go back to the 30s when he was a little kid and talk about meeting Babe Ruth, and then he knows all the batting averages, all the players, and if we keep him going long enough, he goes, "Oh, Dan, you would have loved it." Now the next day he won't remember I'm there, but he'll work his way all the way up. So what I
Yeah.
in my play was, instead of baseball, I've substituted old movies. So every time we're lost, if we say something like, you know, ain't that the truth, the awful truth, and we'll be totally depressed, and Patty will go, the awful truth. Cary Grant and Irene Dunn, and we're back to creating again.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Oh,
you'll enjoy
that
it.
is
Come
so
see it.
fun.
I'll
I am
introduce
gonna come see it
Patty
for sure.
afterward. Yeah, you let me know when you want to come. So.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely love that. So that is so exciting. And so when you do off Broadway, how long is the run? Do you determine the run, or is it just depending on ticket
No,
sales?
in off Broadway, you always hope it'll run long enough for the producers to share in royalties for future productions. You tell we're in New York by the motorcycle.
Yeah.
So we hope to run till the end of June, and uh, it costs a lot even for off Broadway. So we know we're probably not going to make our money back in New York, but we hope that a number of theaters will do it. Plus, the play can be done with like love letters, where you can have two actors sit on a bench and read it for charity events. And like Joe Montaigne and Gene Smart, they're good friends. Talk about two great people. They want to read it for a charity event. And Carol Burnett just read it and said, "Oh, I want to read this. Let me see if I can talk Dick Van Dyke and do it." So I hope they do.
Oh, that would be great. So it could kind of go around like a traveling show.
Yeah, and it can be done to raise money for not just Alzheimer, but to help regional theaters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's I think with I was talking to a TV show exec, and with the success of the Golden Bachelor, and our baby boomers being the biggest generation right now as far as population goes, that is what people want to see. They want to see like what's relatable to this crowd. Going into, touching people in retirement villages. Maybe that's something you could even do too. Kind of do a
Yes.
spin-off for these big retirement communities and
Well, we could definitely read it for the retirement communities, but
yeah.
they have always, I don't like to bring up things negative, but the biggest, and my play deals with this in some way, the biggest prejudice in America is not towards Black Americans or Asian Americans or gay Americans or Hispanic
Yeah.
Americans, whatever. The biggest prejudice, and I say the biggest because it encompasses all of them, is to the elderly. Every grant I've read for playwriting will say young Black writers, young Asian writers, young writers of diversity. The key word in all of them is young. You know how many people would not even read my play because I'm a 75-year-old writer?
I mean, I hopefully like that'll change because we're still talented. We're not dead, right?
I know.
But
And my point is that doesn't change the words on the page.
no.
You're
And
not going to help any group if you produce a lesser play.
well,
Like
exactly.
Terry
And
would say, the worst night of your life is sitting through a bad play. The best night of your life is sitting through a great play that you will remember the rest of your life. You go to Hamilton and you will never forget seeing it. Doesn't matter how
yeah.
Lynn was when he wrote it or Tommy Kail was when he directed it.
Well, especially with your topic, though, you couldn't have had a young writer do that because they wouldn't be able to be authentic. They don't have
Well,
enough life experience.
I read, for 10 years in Hollywood, when I got to Wonder Years, I started a reading program where we started once a month. After 6 months, we did twice a month. And then after a year, for 9 straight years, we read a new play every Monday night to try to help writers get literary agents. And it caught on. So we always had big stars,
Yeah.
huge. I mean, Charlie Jane, Peter Falk, everybody, Jenna Rollins. Tom Hanks directed it. He never read one, but he directed the ones that his wife Rita did. And the purpose was to help writers get literary agents. We never asked a writer how old they were. We went, I don't care what the topic is. You're a young person, you write a great play about Alzheimer's. I'm putting it on. You could
Right.
you could be somebody suffering with Al and you write a terrible play. I'm not going to put it on.
Right. No, exactly. No, that's very true. But yeah, I think it's just we have such an ageist society, and it's always been that way. I mean, you look at all the commercials and it's like, use this cream to look younger,
Yeah.
use this to be younger. And all of a sudden you start getting older and it's like, well, am I expired? And it's like, no, you never
No, you're probably more proficient at your craft along,
Yeah, and you've worked out all the other kind of the lessons and experiences you've had that shaped who you are. So yeah, people are very, it's kind of an ageist society, but hopefully we'll kind of snap out of that. Um,
I I don't know. I don't know. I know in the theater they're worried about grants, and I understand. Ever since COVID, a third of the audience didn't come back, and the young kids are on that phone, so it's hard to get them into the theater. But it takes time to develop as a writer and actor. Matter of fact, Charles Durning, who saw everything I ever did, he would always, after a performance, put his arm around me and go, "All right, another 20 years, you'll be an actor." And I go, "Yeah, I'll keep working." So I think that was the best compliment I ever had. I did a play with Jack Klugman, and Charles Durning and Peter Falk and Dom DeLuise came on a Sunday, and we had Monday, Tuesday off. And we had one of those great performances. And as we're
yeah.
bowing, Jack said, "We got to get the boys together and find out what we did right." You know,
Yeah.
Tuesday night, we go to dinner. Great stories. And Charles Durning, very emotionally, puts his arm around me and he goes, "All right, another 10 years, you'll be an actor."
Yeah.
I thought I won the Academy Award. I said, "Yeah, all right, I'm still working." And then Jack Klugman, the great Jack Klugman, looks at the great Charles Durning and says, "Charlie, are you an actor yet?" And Charles Durning raised his thumb and index finger about an inch apart and said, "Charlie, I'm getting damn close."
Oh.
And Peter Falk reached over and said, "I think you're there, Charlie."
Yeah. Oh, those are great, great memories. But
It's
yeah,
a different attitude. They love the craft.
I think there's a huge difference, and you probably see it between people that truly love what they do and the acting versus somebody who's just doing it for fame.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of people today are famous for being famous, but they haven't done anything.
Right. Well, especially with the rise of social media, all of a sudden you got all these famous people. You're like, wait, what? But
Yeah,
it's the money talks. Like, especially, with comedy, you can have a maybe average comedian, but if they have millions of followers and they can fill the seats, well,
yeah.
it's the bottom line.
That's why I tell young actors in my lecture, I think it's much harder for them than it was for me, because all I had to do was learn to act. Nobody asked me for a reel or a disc or a tape or how many hits do I have on a
Oh,
website. You just acted until somebody saw your work and said, "Okay, I want you in this play or that play." And eventually you hit something, if you're lucky, that everybody wanted to see. And that led to television auditions. And I mean, I did Lombardi on Broadway with Judith Light, but I, she would always make me finish the sentence. They'd say, "How long have you known Judith?" And I say, "Oh, I was her pimp for years, 2 years." And they
yeah.
go, "Finish the sentence." Of course, it was on the soap opera, One Life to Live.
I love
It was
it.
Gus the Killer Pimp. But when Tommy Kail was auditioning and we saw a lot of stars, he just wasn't happy. And I said, "Wait one more day, see Judith Light." And he did. And he didn't even let her leave the office. He called and said, "She's it." Of course, they said we wouldn't, two TV people, we wouldn't run 6 weeks. We ran 11 months.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing.
but it was mostly because of her, because, men would go because it's football, but it was the wives saying, "Oh, you're going to love it," because it's more about family and the relationship with them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, when you get something that you create that brings the families together, that's when the true magic is really there.
Yeah. So it all kind of leads in,
Yeah. So what has been in your life the greatest lesson you've ever learned?
The greatest lesson or the greatest job?
Greatest lesson. Because
The
life is
greatest
all
lesson.
a bunch of experiences that are sometimes the most impactful lessons, something that maybe changed your life.
Yeah, well, the answer is the same. The greatest lesson, and what's the greatest part you've ever done? The next one. And I learned that from Charlie Durning. You don't look back. Everybody wants to talk about the Wonder Years like you do.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
want to talk about Broadway, Lombardi, and that's great. I'm very pleased with those. But I'm looking forward in a couple of weeks being on stage with Patty McCormick, and that's going to be my best thing. And when that's over, it'll be the next one. It's the most important word in life. Next.
I love that though, because it's an optimistic attitude,
Yes.
of like there's still so much more left in you and so much optimism. And
Yeah,
yeah,
because it
I love
doesn't,
that.
it's like a great athlete. He gets up and he strikes out with the bases loaded and 2 outs. He's still got to get up again. So it's that if he's going to dwell on striking out, he's giving the pitcher an advantage the next time he's up. Of course, you learn
Yes.
why he struck out. Maybe shouldn't have swung at that pitch, but now all that's got to be put aside, and it's the next time up. And I think that's the most important thing in life.
I love that. That is amazing. Almost like the podcast, Next to Madison.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Who's next? Right. This interview, good or bad, you still got to do another one.
Yeah. No, I love this. So where can people find out more information about you, the play, follow you, all that stuff?
Well, if you go to justanotherday.theater, you'll find out everything about the play. I have a Facebook page, but I don't really do it. I'm not into that
Yeah.
stuff. Cool play, love to go out afterwards, hear responses from the audience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm this pretty much open book. You Google me, pretty much what they say on Wikipedia is, everybody complains they get a few things wrong. Nah, but it's pretty much me.
Oh, I love it. Well, congratulations. And I'm so excited to come see the show and see you in action.
Oh yeah, just another day, and you'll meet Patty afterwards, and
Yeah,
I'm sure you're going to want to have her on the show. She's
absolutely. Of course. Well, I am very excited for you. And thank you so much for being my guest. I appreciate it. I feel so honored to have
oh,
you on because I've been
honored to
watching you
be
since I was
here.
a little kid.
Well, it's a nice way of saying you're old, but thank you.
No, no. You look great, Dan, okay?
Oh, good. I fooled you. All right.
Yeah, but I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's listening. We will see you next time to find out who's next. Bye.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.